is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Sohn, you were, as you noted, one of 3 board members of Locast, and you signed the settlement agreement. Did the organization have the authority to settle the case without your signature, knowledge, and consent?
No. Well, they did agree to the term sheet. I did not sign that, okay? But obviously, I was on the board. Now, I could have been, if I had said, well, I think we should appeal, and the other 2 board members said, no, 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 we got to settle, then, but obviously I was consulted as to whether Sports Fan Coalition New York should settle or appeal. So technically, yes, they could have moved forward without my vote.
Were you ever involved in discussions with the litigants about reducing the $32 million settlement agreement amount to or immediately after your nomination? Prior to, I should say, or immediately after?
No. That was decided by the parties. Again, I was never a party to the litigation. In fact, the day I stepped on the Sports Fan Coalition New York board, I was never liable in any way. I was not a party. So I had nothing to do with negotiating anything. This was not my agreement to negotiate.
Were there any commitments made to support you publicly if you recused yourself from certain issues?
I haven't gotten that support, so no. There's been no agreements, and I don't think I've gotten anything other than a lot of heartache for recusing. Okay. So nobody has promised me any votes. NAB is not supporting me, right? They're neutral, which is what they were before, so I actually haven't gotten anything because of my voluntary recusal. I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do.
I want to shift to a policy question. I think you and I probably have big differences of opinion about how the FCC ought to regulate the internet, and I've argued in the past that what your position and others who share your position are saying is we want to regulate a 2020 technology under a statute that's 100 years old, and that it's time for Congress to update that. And I've offered to do that when I was the chairman of this committee, to do away with a lot of the things everybody was concerned about, and yet, you know, we didn't have any real particular willingness to negotiate on that. But I want to ask you, because we have a back and forth now, potentially, between various administrations. When there's a change of power, we got new rules, and which creates uncertainty and lack of predictability and everything else. Do you think that the FCC ought to come to Congress when it comes to the next iteration, if you will, of net neutrality rules to prevent that back and forth?
Senator, I would love to see Congress settle the matter of FCC authority and net neutrality. It's not just about the bright line rules. And I know, unfortunately, because you had a death in your family, you weren't able to come to the December 1 hearing, and I'm sorry to hear that. But I would love for Congress to settle the matter. And again, it's not just about the bright line rules, it's also about the FCC having oversight. And as we learned during the pandemic, it's very important. Nobody says that broadband isn't an essential service anymore, so we must have an agency that has oversight. So I'd love to see Congress do it. However, I don't think the FCC should wait until Congress acts in order to restore that authority.
So you've come out in favor, of course, of the Obama-era net neutrality rules, but you've also suggested that you would support the FCC going further to adopt policy to handle issues like zero rating and data caps. Does that remain your position today? Yes or no?
So I mentioned these things in, I think there was an article that was based on a paper I wrote a year and a half ago. And my position on net neutrality and FCC authority is always evolving. So I cannot stand before you today and say, I believe in X, Y, and Z. I expect, because based on her support for starting a new proceeding, that the chair will start a new proceeding. I will examine the record. I will confer with you. I will confer with my colleagues. And then I'll reach a decision. But whatever I wrote in 2020 it was an academic paper, and frankly, it's just academic. Because there's been a lot of changes, even in that year and a half, and certainly a ton of changes since 2015 when we adopted the Open Internet Order, changes in business models, changes in the way consumers use internet access. So I can't really prejudge about how I would rule specifically.
Very quickly, the issue of impartiality. You're going to be a referee. You have taken sides, as you've pointed out, but I mean, some of the things that you said on your Twitter account, the attacks that you've launched, for example, on Fox News, And trust me, the latter have played their role in destroying democracy and electing autocrats like, say, Fox News. Fox News has had the most negative impact on our democracy. In the same tweet, you said Fox News is state-sponsored propaganda. You've attacked Sinclair Broadcasting, and just a minute ago you attacked the Big Four in an answer to a previous question. How are you going to be impartial? I mean, these are not like positions. I mean, these are attacks, and you are going to be a referee.
Yes, Senator, I wasn't, just to be clear, I was not attacking the Big Four. I was just saying they're big companies and they have more means than a tiny little nonprofit. So let me just be clear about that.
Fox News is an attack.
Yeah, but Fox, let me just talk about that. And Senator Blunt, I'm smiling at you because you and I talked about this on December 1st. Those tweets came in the discussion of big tech and whether they should be responsible for disinformation. And that was said as a public advocate and a private citizen and has no bearing on any proceeding that Fox would be involved in. Secondly, Fox News is not a regulatee of the FCC. It's a cable network and the FCC doesn't regulate them. But that's beside the point. The larger point is the tweets were said in my personal capacity. I kind of wish my tone was a little less sharp. In fact, I don't kind of wish, I do wish. And it would have no bearing on any proceeding that would come before me at the FCC.